He betrayed me in front of the cameras, handed my title and my future to the intern he was sleeping with. But I was the one rewriting the ending. He thought I'd walk away quietly. Instead, I walked back in, with my name on the building and the only man who ever loved me right at my side. I should have worn black. Instead, I wore power navy, a sharply tailored jumpsuit with an open back, gold belt cinching my waist, and heels high enough to send a message without saying a word. It was the Reed Tech Annual Shareholders Gala, and technically I co-founded the company. But somewhere along the way, Landon Reed became its public face. My boyfriend of 3 years, my business partner of 4, and, up until last night, my fiancé. I stepped into the ballroom 15 minutes late as planned. Nothing screams power like making people wait for you without ever asking them to. The room was full. Investors, board members, tech reporters, photographers, and an absurd number of crystal light fixtures for a company that claimed to be minimalist. I spotted Landon on stage, microphone in hand, that signature Reed Tech smugness baked into his smile. He didn't glance at me. That was mistake number 1. "Thank you for coming," Landon's voice rang out across the room. "Tonight is about more than numbers. It's about vision, future, and the people who will carry it forward." I folded my arms, champagne flute untouched in my hand. I already knew something was wrong. Landon always rehearsed his speeches with me, word for word. But this, I hadn't seen this version. He turned slightly to his right, and there she was, Claire Duval. Her champagne satin dress still had the store creases. Her posture was off, shoulders pulled too tightly back like she was wearing confidence she hadn't earned. Blonde, delicate, and all of 24. My former intern. My former mentee. Landon cleared his throat. "I'm proud to announce our new chief operating officer, and my future wife, Claire." I didn't drop the flute. I didn't gasp. I smiled. 3 seconds of clean, composed silence passed before I clinked my glass against the stem of a nearby vase and raised it slightly into the air. "To the promotions that take more than hard work," I said clearly. The room fell dead silent. Claire's smile froze. Landon's eyes twitched. The PR director visibly flinched. And I set my glass down with a perfect click, turned around and walked out. No one stopped me. Not even Landon. The valet line was empty. Of course it was. Everyone inside was too afraid to leave early and miss whatever carnage might happen next. I stood beneath the gold-etched Reed Tech logo on the marble facade, the letters ironically catching the light like an omen. I pulled out my phone. 37 notifications. Mostly reporters. I didn't answer any of them. Instead, I opened my private inbox and sent one email. Subject: COO appointment violation. To Reed Tech Legal Counsel. Attachment: Company Charter V.12, Clause 19.6. There was. The clause Landon had apparently forgotten. No executive-level appointment may bypass co-founder West's final approval without board review, per charter revision dated March 22, 2 years prior. I wrote it. I watched it get signed. I owned it. No. It was going to eat him alive. Just as I hit send, a sleek black car pulled up to the curb. The back window lowered. And there he was. Julian Hart. The man I co-founded my first company with. The man I dated when I still believed in messy love and long nights and risk. The man I hadn't seen in over 2 years. He leaned out slightly, eyes unreadable beneath the city lights. "I thought I'd come watch the fire," he said casually. I raised an eyebrow. "And you just happened to be in the neighborhood? Call it strategic timing." I walked over slowly. "Are you here to gloat?" Julian opened the car door. "I'm here to take you home." I didn't hesitate. I got in. The doors shut with a soft click, sealing off the noise from the gala. Inside, the car smelled faintly of cedar and citrus. Just like him. Familiar in a way I hadn't let myself miss. Julian didn't speak. He just stared ahead, waiting. "You knew?" I asked after a minute. "I had a hunch," he said. "I've been watching the filings. Claire's salary suddenly jumped 2 weeks ago." I shook my head. "Figures." He really thought I wouldn't find out. "You always find out," Julian said simply. Then after a pause, "How are you really?" I stared out the window. Embarrassed. "You shouldn't be." "He used my intern, Julian." He turned his head toward me. "He used your name, your brand, your network. He built a glass tower on everything you gave him." I looked back at him, eyes narrowing. You make it sound like I didn't know. Julian's lips twitched into something between a smirk and a sigh. I think you knew. I just think you were too tired to care. Until tonight. He wasn't wrong. I let Landon take more than I should have, because he made it look like love. Late nights, building Reed Tech, charity galas he swore were for us. All the while I was slowly becoming background music to his spotlight. Until he rewrote the script. With Claire. My phone buzzed again. Landon. I turned it off. Julian's car pulled into my building. The doorman nodded at me, surprised to see someone else step out of the driver's side. You coming up? I asked Julian as the elevator dinged open. He hesitated. Not unless you ask me like you mean it, he said. I stared at him. His hair was longer now. His jaw sharper. He looked like someone who'd stopped asking for permission a long time ago. So I did what I hadn't done in years. I meant it. Come up. He followed. And the night that had started with betrayal ended in something else entirely. Something sharper. Something alive. Julian stood just inside the doorway of my apartment like he was trying to decide whether to stay or walk away before anything familiar could catch fire. I dropped my clutch onto the marble kitchen counter and kicked off my heels without ceremony. My phone buzzed again on the counter and I didn't need to look. It was Landon. Probably switching between guilt, panic, and arrogance depending on the hour. I picked up the phone, tapped a few settings and placed it face down. Do not disturb. Then I turned around. Julian was still by the door. You going to stand there all night or are you waiting for applause? I asked. He raised one brow. I'm just trying to decide if this is an ambush or an after-party. I gave him a slow smile. It's whatever you want it to be, heart. That made him smirk, just slightly, but he didn't move. Not yet. Tell me what you're planning, he said instead. I already started, I replied, walking to the fridge and grabbing 2 bottles of sparkling water. I triggered clause 19.6. His mouth parted. You kept that in? You think I'd let go of my kill switch? I wrote the damn charter. He just never bothered to read the updated version. Julian let out a low whistle and stepped further in, finally shrugging off his coat. You always were terrifyingly elegant about revenge. It's not revenge, I said. It's enforcement. We sat at the bar. Me with my legs crossed like I was at a board meeting. Him sprawled out like he owned the room. He never did like formality. And I never liked when people got too comfortable. Except with him. I'll give legal 24 hours, I said. Then the board gets the email. You think Landon's going to try to preempt it? He's already trying. I pointed to the glowing red notification count on my phone. He's called 12 times. Julian tapped his bottle against mine. To your restraint. I exhaled. God. I should have known. Claire was always too curious. Too ambitious. She used to follow you around like a shadow. Exactly. That's what made her dangerous. She wasn't coming for me directly, she wanted to be me. Julian's eyes were studying me. You think she loved him? I snorted. No. She loved what being with him gave her. Access. Proximity. Press. And that COO title which won't stick. You're going to yank it? Already set it in motion. Good. There was something in the way he said it. Calm but clipped. Julian had always been loyal to a fault. It used to scare me how deeply he could cut someone for the people he cared about. You knew, didn't you? I asked. That this would happen. That Landon wasn't built for partnership. Julian's jaw ticked. I knew he was good at borrowing brilliance. And better at believing it was his. I looked at him. Then why didn't you stop me when I chose him? His voice dropped. Because I wanted to see if you'd come back on your own. Silence. And then, you should have stopped me, I said. You wouldn't have listened. Try me now. He stood suddenly, walked over to the floor-to-ceiling windows, and stared out at the skyline like it held the answer to every mistake we'd made. You know what killed me, he said. Watching you play small to fit inside Landon's empire. When you were the one who built the damn blueprint. My chest tightened. I thought he was safer. Yeah, Julian said, turning back to me. Bez, I never lied to you. That's what made me dangerous. I didn't answer. Bez, it was true. Julian never once promised me ease. He offered chaos. Passion. Equal footing. And I chose the man who offered me predictable praise and called it stability. Now I was standing in the wreckage of that choice. The next morning I woke up to a headache, not from alcohol but from adrenaline. The kind that settles in your spine and reminds you that your entire world tilted, and now you have to act like you planned it. Julian had already gone by the time I stepped into the kitchen. A note was scrawled on my notepad in his handwriting. Told you you'd look better in victory. I'll see you at the meeting. J. I checked my inbox. Legal had replied. Subject: immediate conflict, COO appointment. Clause 19.6 violation. The response was beautiful. Cold, corporate and damning. They confirmed that Claire's appointment was nullified pending full board review. They would issue a formal hold by 10 a.m. Attached: a memo drafted to notify the executive team. CC'd to Landon. And me. I skimmed it. Then I wrote my own. Dear Claire, you are not the COO of Reed Tech. You never were. Please remove all references to this role immediately, including on your social bios, LinkedIn and email signature. Failure to comply will trigger a cease and desist. Sophie West. I hit send. And smiled. At 10:32 a.m. Landon showed up at my office. Not my apartment. My office. The one with my name still etched into the glass. Sophie West, co-founder strategy. He didn't knock. Just barged in like we were still playing house. His tie was loose. His skin was pale. And for once he looked like he'd skipped the PR briefing. Sophie, can we talk? I didn't look up. We are. He blinked. I know you're angry. Angry. I finally met his eyes. No, Landon. That would mean I didn't expect this. That stopped him. I want to explain, he said, lowering his voice. Claire and I don't care. He faltered. But you sent a legal notice. I smiled faintly. Of course I did. You broke the contract. He stepped forward. We don't have to do this publicly. Let me fix it. You can't, I said flatly. You gambled on short-term memory. I bet on long-term structure. Guess which one lasts? His shoulders tensed. Julian's behind this, isn't he? I leaned back in my chair. No. But he's watching. Which, by the way, should terrify you. Landon's eyes flashed. This isn't just about the company, Sophie. We were going to get married. My tone went arctic. You proposed with my money, Landon. My ring. My connections. And then you used my intern to replace me. I made a mistake. No, I said, standing. You made a series of calculated choices. And now I'm doing the same. I walked around the desk and opened the door. He didn't move. Don't make me call security, I said softly. He left. And I sent Julian a text. It begins. By the time Claire posted a photo of herself holding a "Congratulations, Sue" bouquet with one hand and Landon's arm with the other, the legal department had already emailed her a cease and desist. And by the time she saw it, several hours later, I assume, between tagging Vogue Business and checking her follower count, Julian had already scheduled our meeting with the board. That's how revenge really works. Not loud. Not violent. Just efficient. Julian and I walked into the boardroom at precisely 4 p.m. He didn't ask if he could come. I didn't tell him he had to. We just understood what we were doing. Taking back the company that started with a napkin sketch between two overworked undergrads and became a global player, until Landon turned it into a showroom for ego. The room was half glass, half whispers. Everyone already knew why we were there. I took my seat at the head of the table. Julian leaned back in his chair next to me, long fingers clasped, expression unreadable but undeniably alpha. It wasn't a pose. He was like that when we were 20, and he's more dangerous now that he's grown into the body and the silence. Landon entered last. He was sweating. Shall we begin? I said smoothly before anyone else could make a sound. Landon cleared his throat. There's been a misunderstanding. I gestured toward legal, who pulled out a printed copy of Clause 19.6 like it was a murder weapon. There was no misunderstanding, I said. You bypassed a contractual clause. The appointment is void. You don't get to call it back because you're embarrassed. Landon's jaw clenched. The media already picked it up. Then I suggest you release a statement quickly, I replied. Preferably one that doesn't involve further defamation. Or false title claims. You're doing this out of spite. I'm doing this out of ownership, I corrected. Something you wouldn't recognize if it were monogrammed on your cufflinks. The room tensed. Board members were exchanging glances. But no one interrupted me. I wasn't screaming. I wasn't breaking down. I was winning. Julian finally spoke, voice cool. This company has survived 2 pivots, a pandemic and a hostile acquisition attempt. You really think it can't survive your PR stunt? Someone down the table coughed to hide a laugh. I didn't bother. Landon tried to regain footing. Sophie, we were our partners. I turned to him. You stopped being my partner the moment you used Claire as leverage and expected me to sit quietly because you were wearing my ring. Don't do this. Oh, honey, I said, smile razor sharp. I already did. After the meeting, I walked back to my office while Julian trailed a few steps behind me. Once the door closed, I leaned against it for the first time all day and finally exhaled. He said nothing. Instead, he walked up, pulled a granola bar from his pocket and held it out. I blinked. What is that? Food, he said, deadpan. I figured you skipped lunch. And smiling while destroying men burns calories. I took it reluctantly and tore the wrapper. Thanks. Julian sat on the edge of my desk. You know he's not going to go down without taking a few swings, right? I'm counting on it, I said. If he does something reckless, it only makes my case easier. What if he goes public? I'll go louder. He studied me for a long second. You're different now. Stronger. Sharper. I tilted my head. Is that a compliment or a warning? It's both, he said quietly. But mostly it's why I came back. That night, I lay in bed with my laptop, scrolling through the first whispers online. A few finance gossip pages had picked up on the tension at Reed Tech. Someone leaked the retraction email. My bet is on someone in PR with a grudge in a group chat. The headlines were delicious. Intern to COO? Not so fast. Engagement to firing. The fastest fall in tech? Who really owns Reed Tech? I didn't comment. I didn't repost. I just watched. And drafted the next piece. A press statement from me. Reed Tech press release. Draft 1. Due to recent misinformation being spread across media platforms, I, Sophie West, would like to clarify that no executive appointment was finalized or approved by my office. Reed Tech remains committed to transparency and professional standards in all executive decision-making. Our co-founder agreement and board-reviewed charter remains active and binding. We do not reward ambition that lacks integrity. I sent it to Julian. He replied within 3 minutes. Fire. Let's post it tomorrow at 10 a.m. sharp. Also, you left out your mic drop. And for the record, I don't recycle interns. Too far. I laughed into my pillow. Then deleted the last sentence in the release and typed exactly that. The next morning, Claire posted a tearful, dimly lit Instagram story captioned, "Don't judge what you don't understand. I was just trying to love someone who lied to me too." Comments were disabled. My inbox flooded again. A journalist texted, "Will you be commenting on the intern's emotional trauma?" I replied with a single word. No. Then I posted the statement. Julian called me 10 minutes later. Claire's having a breakdown, he said, and Landon's losing control. Good. I'm going to offer them a rope, he added. The more they try to climb out, the harder they fall. Send it. Claire always wanted to be me. The way she dressed, structured blazers, soft-toned lipstick, the sleek center part she insisted made her look cleaner. All of it was studied mimicry. I watched it happen in slow motion over the 2 years she worked as my intern. I taught her how to speak in rooms full of men. I taught her when silence holds more power than argument. I even taught her which brand of pens board executives subconsciously trust. I didn't teach her how to betray me. She figured that part out on her own. Julian's rope was simple. He leaked the first photos. A collection of unretouched images from Claire's old internship days, pulled directly from internal event archives. In one, she's half drunk at the launch after-party, laughing too loudly and nearly spilling a martini. In another, she's caught mid-eye roll behind an investor's back. Baker. A security cam still, time-stamped, of her cozying up to Landon in the office hallway. 1 week before my engagement to him. Julian had everything. I didn't ask how. I just forwarded it to my media contacts. By the end of the day, the headlines were everywhere. Reed Tech's internso's wild office past exposed. Sophie West's former protege accused of using CEO to leapfrog the ladder. Company founder outsmarts new fiancé with a legal clause. I received 37 interview requests before noon. I declined them all. Let the story tell itself. Landon tried to call again. I blocked him. Claire, on the other hand, finally showed her face. She came to the office. Uninvited. I heard her heels before I saw her. They clicked down the glass hallway in rapid fire. Panicked. Designer. Unsure. She didn't even knock. Sophie, Claire blurted out, eyes wide and damp. Please. I looked up slowly from my laptop, calm as ever. I assume this isn't a calendar appointment? She stepped forward. I know how this looks. You mean that you backdoored a C-level position through my fiancé while wearing a version of my wardrobe and stealing my seat? Her jaw trembled. He said you were distant. That you didn't want the job anymore. That I what? I said quietly, standing up. That I gave him permission to replace me? She shook her head violently. I was stupid. I thought he was telling the truth. And I loved him. You loved the idea of being me. No, she said, voice cracking. I admired you. I still do. I walked around the desk, slow, unhurried. You admired me so much you took what I built, slipped into my life like a cheap knockoff and thought no one would notice. Claire's eyes filled with tears. Sophie, I'm sorry. Please. Don't ruin me. I looked her dead in the eye. Claire, I don't have to ruin you. You did that yourself. Behind her, Julian stood in the doorway. His gaze cool, arms folded. Claire turned around and flinched. You need to leave, Julian said simply. I just wanted to explain. I don't care, he cut in, voice like glass. Neither does she. Claire took a shaky breath. Can I, at least keep my job? I gave her a small, pitying smile. Sweetheart, you never had a job. 10 minutes later, HR escorted her out with security standing politely in the corner. She didn't resist. But she cried the whole way down the hall. Julian closed the office door behind her. She's going to spin this, he said. Frame herself as the victim. She can try, I replied, sitting back down. Let's see what sticks when the facts are concrete and her mascara isn't. He grinned. You've gotten vicious. You make it sound like I wasn't before. No, Julian said, stepping closer. Back then you were fire. Now, you're ice. And I like it. I leaned back. We done for the day? Not quite. One more thing. He opened his phone, scrolled and turned it to face me. It was a screenshot of Landon's private message to one of the investors. Don't worry. Sophie's just emotional. She'll calm down and take the press release down in a few days. I raised an eyebrow. He really thinks I'll cave? He thinks you still care what people think of him. I laughed under my breath. Poor bastard. I don't even hate him. He's not worth the energy. You're not going to respond? I smirked. No need. I opened my laptop. Typed a new document. Subject. Formal petition for CEO oversight review. To ReTech Board of Directors. And I hit send. Julian's phone buzzed. He looked at it. Then at me. He's going to throw a fit, he said. You just requested a performance review. I didn't request it, I said, shutting the laptop. I demanded it. The next morning, Landon stormed into the boardroom ahead of schedule. He looked like he hadn't slept. Shirt wrinkled. Tie undone. No Claire in sight. I was already seated. Julian was sipping espresso in the corner like it was a game he already won. Landon slammed a folder on the table. I can't believe you'd do this to me. Landon, I said evenly, this isn't about what I did to you. This is about what you did thinking I wouldn't fight back. You think the board's going to vote me out? I said, they'll do whatever protects the company's image. And right now that image is bleeding because you couldn't keep your pants zipped or your press releases honest. He turned to Julian. And you just show up and start playing hero again? Julian stood up, slow and deliberate. Oh no, he said, voice low. I'm not the hero in this story. He looked at me. She is. I always thought the moment I'd take back my life would be loud, explosive even. The kind of thing that gets immortalized in memoirs and business school case studies. But it wasn't. It was quiet, clinical, like the sound of a gavel after a long deliberation, sharp, final and clean. Landon didn't yell when the board agreed to open a CEO performance review. He didn't throw anything. He didn't even flinch when they announced the interim oversight committee. He just looked at me. Not with love. Not with hate. But with the dawning realization that I was no longer his to underestimate. And that terrified him more than anything else. Julian walked me back to my office in silence. Not the awkward kind. The kind that comes when two people are processing something seismic without needing to fill the space with words. I opened the door and let it swing shut behind us. Well, I said softly. That happened. Julian didn't answer right away. He leaned against the closed door, hands in his pockets, watching me like he was seeing something new in real time. You really did it, he said finally. I met his gaze. I meant it when I said I wrote that contract to protect myself. And it worked. I nodded once. It did. He stepped forward slowly, the distance between us shrinking one unhurried step at a time. And now I rewrite everything, I said. On my terms. There was something about the way he looked at me in that moment. Quiet awe mixed with an undercurrent of something deeper. Something sharp and warm and dangerous in all the ways I used to be afraid to feel. I should have said something sarcastic. I should have deflected. But I didn't. Instead, I let him come closer. So close I could feel the warmth radiating from his chest. So close that I forgot to pretend I wasn't still in love with him. Julian reached up and brushed a strand of hair from my cheek, his fingers lingering just a second longer than they should have. Sophie, he murmured. And then he kissed me. Fully. Deliberately. Like he had all the time in the world and he intended to use every second of it. It wasn't wild or reckless. It was a promise. A reminder. Of what we had been. And everything we still could be. When he finally pulled back, his voice was low. I waited 2 years to do that again. I looked at him, heart pounding. What took you so long? I had to wait until you were done saving him. I didn't say a word. Because he was right. That night, I lay in bed wide awake, staring at the ceiling, my mind spinning through every decision I'd made since the beginning of Read Tech. Every compromise. Every favor disguised as love. Every silence I accepted instead of asking why. And then I remembered something Landon said a year into our relationship, when I questioned his sudden promotion of Claire to junior strategist. You don't need to compete with her. You've already won. It wasn't a compliment. It was a leash. The next morning I walked into the office in a white suit. No jewelry, no makeup, just a clean, sharp line of fabric that made people sit up straighter when I passed. Julian was already there. He looked up from my desk which he had no business sitting behind, and smiled lazily. Nice suit, he said. You're in my chair. I kept it warm for you. I narrowed my eyes but said nothing as I sat down across from him. He handed me a folder. What's this? A list of investors who reached out privately after the statement went out. They're backing you. Not him. I flipped through the names. Recognized 5. Smiled at 3. This is good, I said. Julian leaned forward. This is inevitable. Sophie, you don't just have a company. You're the company. They've seen it now. And what about you? I asked, folding the folder shut. What are you still doing here, Julian? He met my eyes evenly. Making sure no one else gets to forget who built this empire. Later that afternoon, Landon sent me an NDA. An offer to quietly resolve the misunderstanding in exchange for a staged press conference announcing amicable restructuring and a payout that would barely cover the wardrobe Claire borrowed and never returned. I read it once, laughed, and sent it back with one sentence. You don't get to end the story you didn't write. When Landon proposed to me, it wasn't on one knee. There were no trembling hands or teary eyes. It happened at a gala in front of flashing cameras and champagne flutes. He didn't look at me, he looked at the crowd. Because it was never about us. It was about optics. A performance. Now he was losing the stage. And watching him unravel without an audience was almost disappointing. Almost. The morning of the investor conference, my inbox was suspiciously quiet. No urgent revisions from PR. No updated speaker list from Landon. No last-minute strategy notes. Julian glanced at me across the sleek black car that was taking us to the venue. It's too quiet. I smiled. That's how you know he's planning something. You think he'll try to speak before you? Wouldn't surprise me. He always liked opening acts. Especially when they looked better than the finale. Julian didn't laugh. His jaw was tight. I'll be standing by the curtain. If he pulls anything, he won't get the chance, I said, calmly reapplying a nude lipstick. The moment he tries, we pull the claws. You brought it. I tapped my bag. Board signed and time-stamped. Julian smiled, the tension easing just slightly from his shoulders. God, I forgot how lethal you are in heels. Good, I said, stepping out of the car. Let him remember the hard way. The hotel ballroom was decked in white roses and LED screens. A rotating backdrop cycled through Reed Tech's milestones. My photo, young, bright-eyed from our first funding round, flashed on screen for exactly 3 seconds before fading into a slideshow of his highlights. Julian appeared at my side. You weren't on the latest agenda. Of course I wasn't, I muttered. He's trying to make it look like I'm gone. Landon's voice boomed from the side stage speakers. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us today. Julian's head snapped toward the tech booth. He moved his speech up. I smiled, teeth flashing. Then so do I. I walked calmly past the PR girl trying to stop me, up the narrow stairs and directly into the line of the spotlight. Landon froze mid-sentence. His hand was still outstretched toward the mic. I took it from him with a polite nod. He blinked. The room went still. I turned to the crowd. Good afternoon, I said smoothly. Sophie West, co-founder of Reed Tech. The room erupted in applause. Real, enthusiastic from people who had been waiting to see whether I was truly back. Landon tried to smile as if this were all part of the plan. Sophie, if I may. You may not, I said, turning back to the audience. But thank you. He stepped closer. We had agreed. No, I said, smile razor sharp. You announced. I simply didn't stop you fast enough. Landon's jaw ticked. I continued, voice poised. Reed Tech was built on a vision. One that included integrity, innovation, and equal footing for the people who created it. Somewhere along the way, that vision got hijacked. There were murmurs now. Flashes of phones raised. But this morning, I continued, I bring good news. The board has officially approved a restructuring review. Effective immediately, Mr. Landon Reed is placed under formal performance evaluation. And no executive changes made during this review will be recognized by company leadership. Gasps. Someone from the press audibly whispered, Holy. Landon stepped forward, face pale. This isn't how you handle this. This is exactly how I handle this, I said. With facts. With signatures. And with receipts. I pulled the printed board memo from my bag and held it up. Signed. People. Claire, standing in the wings, visibly wilted. Julian took a step onto the stage then, not to overshadow but to stand beside me. Shoulder to shoulder. Unapologetic. Landon finally broke. You think this makes you look strong? I turned, slow and deliberate, and faced him. No, Landon, I said softly into the mic, I am strong. You just confused silence with submission. And kindness with permission. There was silence. And then the applause came. Loud. Sustained. Boo. Not for him. Not anymore. Backstage, Landon cornered me before I could return to the green room. You humiliated me, he hissed. No, Landon. You did that when you brought an intern into my bed while pretending it was love. Claire's threatening to sue, he snapped. For emotional distress. For sabotage. I didn't even blink. Let her. I have her NDA. And the security footage. And the text you sent her the night you proposed to me. His mouth opened. Closed. You kept that. I keep everything, I said. That's what real power looks like. He backed away slowly, jaw clenched. Julian appeared behind him like a shadow. You should go, he said low and cold. Landon turned to him. She's going to destroy me. Julian smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Then maybe you shouldn't have tried to replace a queen with a pawn. Back in the dressing room, I sat down for the first time all day. My fingers trembled. Not with fear but with the kind of adrenaline you only get when you take your name back and no one dares speak over it. Julian leaned against the vanity behind me. You good? He asked. I nodded. I am now. Because of revenge? No, I said, meeting his gaze in the mirror. Because I finally remembered I never needed him to begin with. He walked over, gently brushing a hand over my shoulder. You know this isn't the end, he murmured. He's going to keep coming. I know, I said. And I'll keep shutting the door in his face. Julian paused. Then he crouched beside me, gently taking my hand in his. No more shutting me out, though. My heart skipped. I won't, I whispered. And this time when he kissed me, it wasn't about anger or rescue or even victory. It was just love. Real, rooted, patient love. The kind that doesn't need a contract to hold. If you told me a year ago that I'd be sitting at the head of the table again, this time with Julian to my right and Landon under board review, I wouldn't have believed you. Not because I didn't think I was capable, but because I'd forgotten what it felt like to be respected. Not tolerated. Not placated. Respected. 3 days after the investor conference, Claire left the city. Quietly. No grand statement. No apology. No lawsuit. Just a single Instagram story of a suitcase at JFK and a caption that read, "Sometimes the only way forward is out." I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. Julian sent me the screenshot and wrote underneath, "Exit interview, skipped." I didn't reply. Not because I was ignoring him, but because for the first time in a while I didn't need to respond to everything. Some things collapse on their own. And some exits don't need to be chased. Just allowed. Landon, however, wasn't done. The morning after Claire's departure, he filed an internal motion to delay his board hearing. Medical leave, the email read. Stress-induced complications. Julian stared at the screen. He's playing the sympathy card. It won't work, I said flatly. It might buy him time. I'm not worried about time, I said, already drafting my response. I'm worried about precedent. Julian grinned. There she is. We submitted a formal reply within 2 hours. Attached. Records of Landon's full attendance at 3 social functions during the supposed onset of stress, including a charity poker night, a silent auction, and an influencer's rooftop party where he was photographed with a whiskey in one hand and a woman in the other. When the board denied his request, Landon went silent, which made me more nervous than if he'd screamed, because quiet Landon meant desperate Landon. That weekend, Julian took me out of the city. He didn't call it a date. He didn't call it anything. Just showed up in front of my building at 7 a.m. with 2 coffees, a packed overnight bag, and his usual effortless calm. Where are we going? I asked, slipping into the passenger seat. He didn't look at me. Somewhere he can't find you. It was a coastal cottage. Small, tucked away, and warm in the way that only places with no cell reception can be. I hadn't realized how tense I was until I sat down on the porch and stared at the ocean, my phone locked away in Julian's glove compartment. He came out behind me holding 2 glasses of red wine. I remember this version of you, he said. I glanced over. What version? The one who breathes. I smiled faintly. I forgot how. We sat in silence, the only sound the crash of the waves and the slow ticking of time. Julian didn't rush me. Didn't pry. He just sat beside me. Steady. That night I found him in the kitchen making pasta. Badly. You're supposed to stir the sauce, I said, leaning against the counter. I am, he replied, wooden spoon in hand. Once every 7 minutes. I took the spoon. Stirred it once. Turned to him. You brought me here to calm down or to poison me? Julian grinned. You're smiling again. I blinked. He took a step closer. You can stay here as long as you want. I have to go back Monday. I meant, longer. I looked up, heart-catching. Julian. He didn't press. Just tucked a loose strand of hair behind my ear and whispered, I'm not asking you to choose right now. I'm just saying, wherever you go, I'll be there. On Monday I walked back into the city with clearer eyes. The kind of clarity you only get after walking away long enough to remember who you were before they tried to rewrite you. The board review was scheduled for Friday. But Landon didn't show. Instead, his assistant arrived with a sealed envelope. Inside, a formal resignation. Unconditional. Effective immediately. The email followed 30 minutes later. A short, cold line that simply read, You win. Keep your empire. I didn't celebrate. Didn't pop champagne. Didn't laugh. I just walked into my office, closed the door, and stared at the view of the skyline I built my name on. Julian knocked gently and stepped inside. He didn't say anything. Just came over and wrapped his arms around me from behind. You did it, he murmured. I didn't want this, I whispered. I know. I wanted him to fight. I know. Because then I wouldn't feel like I buried something that was already dead. Julian turned me around. Held my face in his hands. You didn't bury anything, Sophie. You just stopped pretending it was alive. And that was the moment I cried. Not because I lost, but because I finally let go. 2 weeks after Landon's resignation, I walked into the annual Tech Future Summit through the front doors. Not as a silent partner, not as a co-founder's fiancé, not as someone's strategic accessory, but as the keynote speaker. The committee had asked Landon first, of course. Before the scandal. Before the headlines. Before Claire's vanishing act. But now they needed someone clean. Taken. Unapologetically capable. So they came back to the woman who'd built the foundation while he played dress-up with the walls. They came back to me. The ballroom was twice the size of the one from our investor debacle. Flashier. More expensive. Giant screens looped the title of my talk in bold. Rebuilding without permission. Julian stood beside me backstage checking his watch. You ready? He asked. I adjusted my blazer. Does it matter? He smiled faintly. No. Then softer, but I want you to be. I looked at him, at the man who'd watched me burn and still chose to stand in the ashes. I am, I said. More than I've ever been. They called my name. The applause roared. And I walked onto the stage. Good evening, I began, steady and clear. I wasn't supposed to be here tonight. There were chuckles. I paused. I was supposed to be someone else. A quiet partner. A soon-to-be wife. The woman behind the man with the press badge. A murmur rippled through the crowd. But the thing about building something from the ground up is, when you know where the beams are, you also know where the cracks start. I watched their faces. Investors, journalists, execs from companies that once called me too harsh. I don't stand here because I clawed my way back. I stand here because I remembered I never actually left. My name was just buried under someone else's spotlight. I smiled. And I moved the light back. Applause again, louder, fiercer. Somewhere in the back, Julian stood with his arms crossed, his expression unreadable. But I knew what he was thinking. Because I was thinking it too. This wasn't just a comeback. This was a declaration. The panel after my speech included 3 CEOs, 2 of whom had publicly backed Landon last quarter. I shook their hands, smiled politely, then calmly dismantled every excuse they gave for ignoring whistleblowers in tech leadership. One asked, awkwardly, what advice would you give to young women entering this space? I didn't blink. Write your own contracts, I said. And never apologize for reading the fine print out loud. Gasps. Laughter. A thunderclap of applause. Julian looked like he wanted to storm the stage and kiss me again right then and there. Later. The post-summit cocktail hour was full of reporters and executives trying to pretend they hadn't picked the wrong side. Miss West, one investor said, pressing a chilled glass into my hand, your speech gave me chills. You'll be warmer when the stock goes up, I replied smoothly. Julian raised an eyebrow as the man walked off. He took the drink from me and swapped it for one I hadn't touched. That one looked suspicious. I raised a brow. Since when are you the bodyguard? Since someone tried to rewrite your story. I laughed, and for the first time in months it wasn't hollow. That night back at my apartment, Julian was quiet. He leaned against the kitchen counter, watching me unpin my hair, watching me peel out of my heels, watching me slowly return to softness. You were brilliant today, he said finally. You helped. No, he said. You would have done it with or without me. I'm just glad I got a front row seat this time. I turned to face him, heart suddenly too full. Julian. I've been thinking, he said. That's dangerous. He smiled. About us. About what comes next. I walked over slowly. Tell me. He took my hands in his. We both know I walked away once because I thought you needed space to choose the version of yourself you wanted to be. You were right too, I said softly. I didn't know who I was when you left. You do now. I nodded. Then let me say this once, he said. No more sidelines. No more shadows. I want in, Sophie. For real. For everything. The words hovered between us. Not a proposal. Not a demand. Just truth. I leaned in, rested my forehead against his. You're already in, I whispered. The new Reed Tech launch wasn't held in a ballroom. It wasn't dressed in champagne or chandelier light or investors wearing too much cologne. It was held in a converted warehouse on the edge of the city. The same building where Julian and I built our first prototype years ago, back when Reed Tech was still 2 desks for interns and a whiteboard covered in illegible handwriting. Back when no one knew our names. Back before they tried to take mine from me. No. They had to spell it right. Because I owned the building. Because I owned the launch. Because I owned everything. West Hart Labs, Julian said, watching the new logo flicker across the massive screen. I turned to him. 2 on the nose? He shook his head. Perfect. It's time both our names took up space. We were no longer Reed Tech. That brand would wind down in a few months, officially merged into the new venture. Quietly with dignity. Because I didn't need to destroy what I built. I just needed to take my name off what no longer reflected me. No. Now we had something clean. Ours. I stood backstage waiting to deliver the opening speech, and for the first time I didn't feel nervous. I felt grounded. No more shaking hands. No more racing heart. Just quiet certainty that this was mine. Julian glanced at me. You okay? I smiled. I'm home. When I stepped on stage, the room didn't hush, it focused. Phones didn't just rise to record. People leaned in to listen. I spoke not just as a CEO, but as a survivor of everything they tried to erase. This company was built not to replicate what already exists, but to correct what's long been broken, I said. No more rewarding the loudest voice in the room. No more sidelines for the people doing the actual work. I paused. No more erasing women in the footnotes of someone else's story. The applause was thunderous. Julian's hands were in his pockets, but I saw his shoulders ease with pride. After the launch, we had dinner in the conference room, just the original 5 of us from our startup days. Pizza boxes, paper plates and all. No PR. No catered nonsense. Just memory. Julian raced a soda can. To starting over. I raced mine. To finally being seen. Our developer, Leah, added, to being the ones in the room, not the ones waiting to be let in. And our operations lead, Marcus, clinked his can against mine. To Sophie. Because without her, we'd still be working under a man who wore cashmere to a data breach. I burst out laughing. You're never letting that go, are you? Never. That night, I opened the safe in my closet and pulled out the contract. The original co-founders agreement I wrote and Landon had forgotten. The one that gave me control when he assumed I had none. I ran my fingers over the edges. Then I put it in a fireproof envelope labeled, for the woman who forgot she wrote the ending. And I locked it away. Because I didn't need to wave the contract around anymore. I was the contract. Julian proposed with a coffee cup. No ring box. No dramatic kneel. Just a cappuccino with, "Marry me," scribbled in permanent marker on the side of the cup. Right beneath my name, spelled wrong as always. Sophie. I blinked, holding up the cup. He was leaning casually against my kitchen island, wearing yesterday's hoodie and the same boyish grin I'd fallen in love with twice. Look closer, he said. I turned the cup. Below Sophie was a checkbox. Yes. Obviously. I laughed so hard I nearly dropped the cup. This is your proposal? I managed, still laughing. Not even a croissant? You said you wanted a soft life, he said with a shrug. And nothing softer than coffee and bad handwriting at 8 a.m. I looked at him, eyes warm. You didn't even give me a no option. He stepped forward, gently taking the cup from my hands and replacing it with a small velvet box pulled from his hoodie pocket. There is no option, Sophie West. Not for me. Not when I've seen who you are with the world stacked against you and still chose to build your own. My throat tightened. He opened the box. It wasn't a diamond. It was a platinum band etched with the coordinates of the building where we'd built our first prototype. Where we rebuilt us. I want boring breakfasts, he said. I want after-work grocery runs. I want to argue about thermostat settings and whose turn it is to do laundry. I want you in all of it. I swallowed. You want me at my worst? I've already seen you at your worst, he whispered. And I still wanted more. I didn't say yes. I launched myself into his arms, nearly knocking over the kitchen stool behind us. Yes, I mumbled against his shoulder. Obviously. We didn't plan a giant wedding. No press. No ballroom. No hashtag. Just a backyard in upstate New York. The original 5 from the startup days. Julian's dog wearing a bow tie, and my father crying way too early in the ceremony. You haven't even walked me down the aisle yet, I whispered, squeezing his arm. I know, he sniffled. Just proud. Julian turned to look at me when I finally walked out onto the grass. He didn't blink. Didn't breathe. Just whispered, wow, like it was the first time he'd seen me in color. The officiant began, but neither of us were really listening. We were too busy laughing at how Julian's bow tie had come undone and the dog kept barking every time someone said forever. When it came time for vows, I spoke first. I used to think strength meant doing everything alone, I said, voice clear. But then you showed me that sometimes strength is letting someone in. Even when you're scared. Especially when you're scared. Julian wiped his eyes. I wasn't crying. Yet. Then he spoke. I never forgot the day you walked into that pitch room with your folder of patents and a chip on your shoulder. You looked around and decided this world owed you nothing. So you built it yourself. He paused. But I also remember the night you lost everything. And instead of breaking, you rebuilt again. And you let me stand beside you. That's the version of you I get to marry. And every version that comes after. I was definitely crying now. But so was Julian. And our officiant. And the dog. The reception was chaos in the best way. Leah and Marcus made a Sophie and Julian trivia game where the first question was, how many times did Sophie threaten to fire Julian in year 1? The answer was 6. I got it wrong. He got it right. Julian's best man speech included the line, I was scared of you for the first 3 months of our partnership. I still kind of am. But now it's sexy. And when we danced barefoot on the grass under a string of white lights, he whispered, you still don't believe how loved you are, do you? I looked up at him. I'm getting there, I said. You make it easier every day. He kissed my forehead and said, I've got a lifetime to keep proving it. We took 3 weeks off. Unheard of, I know. But we did it. No emails. No meetings. Just a beach villa in Croatia, seafood we couldn't pronounce, and a running joke that he married up and I married someone who still thinks 2-in-1 shampoo is a lifestyle choice. Julian kept a journal on the trip titled, Reasons My Wife is Better Than Me. Day 4 entry. She spotted a typo in the restaurant menu and told the waiter without sounding condescending. Who is she? Day 12. She negotiated down the hotel fee using only eyebrow raises. Terrified. In all. Day 17. I caught her smiling at her laptop. She said she was reviewing a funding proposal. She was actually looking at our wedding photos. When we got home, we framed a photo from the launch. Me standing in front of the West Heart Labs sign, Julian just behind me, half shadow, half smile. The caption underneath simply read, Rewrite your ending. Then sign it in your own name. And on a quiet Sunday afternoon after coffee and bad pancakes and slow dancing in socks, I finally said the thing I'd been carrying for months. I'm happy. Julian didn't look up from the couch. He just smiled and said, I know. I can feel it. And that was the real ending. Or maybe the beginning. But whatever it was mine. Ours. At last. Think.